age the Iron Kings left to the pages of history, the next era of the Iron Islands would be led by the kings of House Hoare. Archmaester Hake of the Citadel tells us that the kings of House Hoare were black of hair, black of eye, black of heart. Their foes claimed their blood was black as well, darkened by the andal taint. For many of the early Hoare kings took maidens of that ilk to wife. True ironborn had salt and water in their veins, the priests of the drowned gods proclaimed. The black-blooded Hoares were false kings, ungodly usurpers who must be cast down. Many tried to do just that over the centuries, as the Archmaester relates in some detail. None, however, succeeded. What the Hoares lacked in valour, they made up for in cunning and cruelty. Few of their subjects ever loved them, but many had good reason to fear their wrath. Their very names proclaimed their natures to us. Even after the passages of hundreds of years, Wulfgar the Widowmaker, Hogar the Priest-Killer, Fragon the Fierce, Oathgar the Soulless, Othgar the Demon-Lover, Craghorn of the Red Smile, the priests of the drowned gods denounced them all. It must be fair we consider, were the kings of House Hoare truly as ungodly as the holy men proclaimed? Archmaester Hake believed there were. Archmaester Harreg takes a very different view on the matter, suggesting that the true crime of the black-blooded kings was neither impiety nor demon worship, rather tolerance. For it was under the Hoares that the faith of the Seven and the Andals came to the Iron Islands for the first time. Prompted by their Andal queens, the kings granted septors and septons their protection and gave them leave to move about the islands preaching the faith of the Seven. The first sept on the Iron Islands was built on Great Wick during the reign of Wulfgar Widowmaker, when his great-grandson Hogar permitted the building of another on Old Wick, where the king's moots had been held in centuries of old. The entire island rose up in bloody rebellion, goaded by the priests of the drowned god. The sept was burned, the septons pulled to pieces, the worshippers dragged into the sea to drown, that they might regain their faith. It was in answer to this, Harreg alleges that Hogar Hoare also discouraged the practice of reaving, and as reaving declined, trade began to grow. There was still wealth on the Iron Islands in the form of iron ore, found beneath the hills of Great Wick, Orkmont, Harlaw and Pike, and lead and tin in some places as well. The Ironmen's need for wood to build their ships remained as important as ever, but they no longer had the strength to take it wherever they found it. Instead, they traded iron for timber, and when winter came and the cold winds blew, iron ore became the coin the kings of House Hoare used to buy barley, wheat and turnips to keep their small folk fed, and beef and pork for their own tables. Paying the iron price took on a whole new meaning, one many ironborn found humiliating, and the priests declared shameful. The depth of ironborn pride and power was reached during the reigns of the three Harmunds. On the Isles, they are best remembered as Harmund the Host, Harmund the Haggler, and Harmund the Handsome. Harmund the Host was the first king of the Iron Islands, known to be literate. He welcomed travellers and traders from far corners of the world to his castle on Great Wick. He treasured books and gave septons and scepters his protection. His son Harmund the Haggler shared his love of reading and became renowned as a great traveller. He was the first king of the Iron Islands to visit the Green Lands without a sword in his hands. Having spent his youth as a ward of House Lannister, the second Harmund returned to Casterly Rock as king and took the Lady Lea Lannister, a daughter of the King of the Rock, and the fairest flower in the west for his queen. On a later voyage he visited Highgarden and Old Town to treat with their lords and kings and foster trade. His own sons were raised in the faith, King Harmund's own particular version of it at least. Upon his death, the eldest of his sons ascended the throne, Harmund the Handsome. Influenced, some say, by his Lannister mother, the Dowager Queen Lea, he announced that henceforth reavers would be hanged as pirates rather than celebrated, and formally outlawed, and he also formally outlawed the taking of salt wives, declaring the children of such unions to be bastards with no rights of inheritance. He was considering a measure to end the practice of thraldom on the islands as well, when a priest known as Shuraik began to preach against him. Other priests took up the cry, and the lords of the Isles took heed. Only the Septons and their followers stood by King Harmund, as he was overthrown within a fortnight, almost bloodlessly. What followed was far from bloodless, however. The Shrike himself tore out the deposed king's tongue, so he might never speak lies and blasphemies. Harmund was blinded as well, and his nose was cut off, so all men might see him for the monster he is. In place, the lords and priests crowned his younger brother Aegon. The new king quickly denounced the faith, rescinded Harmund's edicts, and expelled the septons and scepters from his realm. Within a fortnight, every sept in the Iron Islands was aflame. King Aegon, soon to be known as Aegon the Heartless, even permitted the mutilation of his own mother, Queen Leah, the Lannister Hoare, who was blamed by Shrike for turning her husband and sons away from their true god, the drowned god. Her lips, ears, and eyelids were cut off, and her tongue ripped out with hot pincers, after which she was bundled onto a longship and returned to Lannisport. The King of the Rock, her nephew, was so angered by this atrocity that he called his banners. The war that followed left 10,000 dead, 3/4 of them ironborn. In the 7th year, the Westermen landed on Great Wick, smashed Aegon's host in battle, and captured his castle. Aegon the Heartless was mutilated in the same fashion as his mother before being hanged. So Aubrey Crakehall, commanding the Lannister armies, ordered the Hoare castle to be razed to the ground. But as his men were looting, they came upon Harmund the Handsome in the dungeons. Crakehall briefly considered restoring Harmund to his throne, Archmaester Harag claims. But the former king was blind, broken, and half mad from long confinement, so Aubrey granted him the gift of death instead, serving Harmund a cup of wine laced with milk of the poppy. Then, in an act of mad folly, the knight decided to claim the kingship of the Iron Islands for himself. This pleased neither the Ironborn nor the Lannisters. When word reached Castle Rock, the king called his warships home, leaving Crakehall to fend for himself. Without the power and wealth of House Lannister to prop him up, King Aubrey saw his power crumble quickly. His reign lasted less than half a year before he was captured and sacrificed to the sea by the Shrike himself. The war between the Ironborn and the Westermen continued in an unorderly fashion for 5 more years, finally ending in an exhausted peace that left the Iron Islands impoverished, burned, and broken. The winter that followed was long and harsh, and is remembered on the Isles as the Famine Winter. Hake tells us that 3 times as many Ironborn perished of starvation that winter that had died in the pointless and bloody battles that preceded it.